Good evening, SEC Nation, and welcome to the 29th edition of SEC Live from yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and the host of South Carolina Gamecocks Live from South Carolina at the voice of college football, Walker Gaskins. As we
How you
go,
doing, Jackson?
huh?
How you doing, Jackson?
Oh, I'm doing great. How you doing tonight, good buddy?
I'm doing good. We've been hitting the portal hard for the Gamecocks, but yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to being on the show today.
Oh man, it's gonna be fun. We're going over some portal winners and losers, and we're gonna be going over quite a lot, especially whether if it's time to panic. Now that you don't see an SEC team in the national title for the third straight season, is it really time to panic? We're going to go over it all right here on SEC at the voice of college football. But, we got some breaking news to start off the show. Sam Leavitt is going to LSU. He is coming over there. And that's a huge get for them. It's a wild ride for the Bayou Bengals. I mean, like, good grief. It's like I'd say we're gonna start a show with the poor Wells loose, but we'll go. But I think they're kind of add to that. But I'm just like, this is a huge win for the Tigers. They were looking for a QB, and it was funny though. Like Lane Kiffin was talking with Damon Williams, but they's like, okay, Sam Leavitt's leaving for the portal. Okay, get out of here. I won't leave it. And Tennessee was going for him as well, but they were close, but no cigar. Well, not even close to cigar with Sam Leavitt. Yeah, like that's just like a no win for the Vols. But like, what do you think about this, Walker?
Honestly, after Sam Leavitt's 2024 season, that amazing run they had where they eventually lost to Texas and I think it was the quarterfinals. I mean, I just pulled up his stats while we just since we got onto the topic. I mean, 2024, 216 completions for nearly 2,900 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. And what I look at is, although 2025 was a little more disappointing, not just for Sam Leavitt and the Wildcats in general, but if I'm Lane Kiffin in LSU, knowing the quarterback success that Lane Kiffin has had, especially at Ole Miss where he just switched schools from, you look at that 2024 season, and if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm thinking, all right, this is a guy who maybe can't always carry the team on his back, but if he has the right guys, if he has a good running back like Cam Scatabo, if he has the right receivers, this guy can ball out and elevate this offense and operate it at the best that really you can expect from any quarterback in the country. And knowing LSU and knowing the brand and the NIL and the recruiting ability they have, no doubt Lane Kiffin so far and right now has been trying to get guys to build a supporting cast around what will be their main character for their offense in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a much needed win for the Tigers. They needed a QB as much as possible. And I'm just wondering if this automatically makes LSU a winner or if there's more to go for the Tigers, because I feel like there's definitely more to go for the Bayou Bengals.
Yeah, I would definitely put them. I want to see a little bit more out of LSU right now. I actually see a lot of guys from LSU going to Ole Miss right now, so that kind of left me off of putting them in the winners. But also, they haven't done to the point where I would put them in the losers. I think they're one of those teams where they got to get their act together, but it's not fully red alert, DEFCON 1 for them right now.
No, because like I always tell people, don't throw the cart in before the horse and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Those are two important things in life, because like if you got one thing fits, that doesn't mean you got everything else fits. If there's one bad day going on for you, that doesn't mean it's going to be bad days for the dawn of time. That's just not how this works.
Yeah, certainly. Kind of mind blank for a second. Certainly, college football, the game is always, whenever it's being played, is about momentum. And especially for South Carolina, getting Lenore Sellers to return was a big momentum piece for the Gamecocks in the offseason. And I think this could very easily be a momentum piece to bring in some guys who want to play with a quarterback who can produce like Sam Leavitt does.
Oh yeah, I mean, like LSU's definitely playing some K-pop. After all this, they're definitely playing some K-pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just rolling. They are just rolling all right there. So luckily, this gets us really started. This really gets us cooking with gas, as we are now looking over the transfer portal winners and losers for each SEC team. And for a moment, it looked like Alabama was a big loser, but they're kind of winning at the portal apparently because you got some O linemen from Michigan. You got Haywood. Like, that's a win right there. I mean, you got to bulk up on offensive linemen. And one thing to really remember is the portal doesn't close until Friday.
Mm-hmm.
That's the final day of the portal for 2026. And Tennessee definitely lost out on a QB, but who are your portal winners and losers so far, Walker?
Yeah. Speaking of Alabama, hate to do this to you, the voice of college football, but as of right now, I would lean to argue that they're one of the losers in the SEC. When the portal opens, you lose some high-profile guys, and really, it's not the issue that obviously when you're at the University of Alabama, you're going to have high-profile guys with a bunch of talent leave. The problem is I haven't seen them bring in guys in response to that. Like South Carolina, we've had 18 or 19 guys who've entered the portal. But we've had 17 guys who have committed so far. And you look at the last time I checked a couple of hours ago, I know it probably went up one for the guys who transferred in with the new offensive lineman, but 21 guys have left Tuscaloosa, and only 10, which I think now is 11 guys, have come back in. And you look at some of the defensive and skill position departures: Isaiah Horton, Kelby Collins, who came to South Carolina, Keon Keeley, and just I don't think it's one thing like that, but you combine that factor with the amount of guys leaving, with the fact that really Texas A&M, Texas, all these other SEC schools are seeming to be more aggressive than the Crimson Tide right now. And who isn't an Alabama fan, over the past decade, over Nick Saban's years, obviously you feared them on the field, right? One of the best teams, the best dynasty in college football history with the greatest coach of all time. But you also feared them off the field, not only for their transfer portal ability, but for their ability to recruit off of their story, tradition, and basically guaranteed success. And ever since Kalen DeBoers came in, except for that first season where he could build off of the hope of a new program and everything, I would certainly say that teams don't fear Alabama in the same way they did before on the field, and I'd argue off the field as well. I mean, when South Carolina was getting fighting for Jacarius Peak, the number one offensive tackle in the portal from NC State, I read the headliner. It's been, the top two were South Carolina and Alabama. If you had told me that 3, 4, 5 years ago, I'd have been like, all right, good job, Crimson Tide. You got the best offensive tackle in the country in the portal. But nowadays, despite the fact that Alabama certainly has deeper pockets than schools like fear factor that we've had for Alabama on and off the field has weakened a little bit. And I think that's kind of signified, which we'll get to later, the SEC in general as well.
Sorry, I was muted for a moment. You mentioned that one of the Bama guys, Kelby Collins, has committed to South Carolina. It's like, wow, you've been snatched. Like, South Carolina's bringing out the Genjitsu against Bama guys. Like, good grief. Like, they're just taking them for the taking, man. Like, good grief. It's just wild. Like, wow.
So it's kind of a package, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. I mean, this is making me think South Carolina could have a surprising season in 2026 because, I mean, we see that a lot with Shane Beamer teams. When nobody talks about them, they thrive under it. When everybody talks about them, they don't thrive under it. And 2026 is looking really good for them so far. I mean, I know it's way too early. It's January 26th, not July 2026, but still, though, it looks really good for those Gamecocks in Columbia.
Yeah, the story for the Gamecocks have honestly been you win the games you shouldn't, you lose the games you shouldn't. You have the good season when you don't expect it. You have the bad season when you were actually getting hope for the first time. Really, besides that Steve Spurrier era where we had consistent winning despite the pressure of preseason expectations, we haven't really had that in years past. Even when you look at the Black Magic season, no one certainly expected that. They weren't talked about at the beginning of the season like that. But obviously, as a South Carolina host and a personal fan, I'm going to be a little biased. However, I do think they're one of the winning teams in the transfer portal right now. Now, Shane Beamer said when he made comments about their goals in the portal, he didn't want to totally rehaul and revamp everything with the exception of the offensive line. And speaking to the offensive line real quick before I make kind of the rest of the point, we needed an absolute revamp there. You let up 43 sacks, which was the second most in the regular season. It was only two schools had let up more sacks in the regular season, Ball State and Troy. And when you have 43 sacks with the most athletically gifted quarterback and one of the most mobile threats in college football, that's certainly disappointing, especially as an SEC caliber school. When you only rush for 111 yards per game, which is the second worst in a season under Beamer, that's disappointing. So we needed an absolute revamp there. And not only have we brought in depth pieces to kind of reload the depth in the trenches because you need a lot of guys in the line of scrimmage, but I think we brought in guys who honestly have a higher ceiling. You talk about Jacarius Peak, Emmanuel Kojo Poku, Carter Miller, Hank Purvis. You bring in a lot of guys who I think can thrive well under not only a guy where you sometimes, you might miss a block, you have an athletic quarterback. And you're not going to face the same issues that you did last year because you have an offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles who spreads the defense out and tries to put less pressure on every player and give more kind of the less pressure you make on the player, the more ability they have to make the big plays. And I think that's part of what Kendall Briles' philosophy and his scheme is going to be at South Carolina. So I think you're bringing in the right guys on the line of scrimmage, not only offensively, but defensively. You lose Monkel Goodwine to the NFL draft. You lose Nick Barrett to the NFL draft. You lose Xavier Hardy, who was formerly the number one JUCO player in the country when he committed to the Gamecocks last year. Only spent a year here, didn't really do much too. I think a lot of people's surprises in the Gamecock community, including my own. But then you bring in a guy, you bring in dudes like Jordan Thomas from Georgia. I'm going to butcher the name, Tamiwa Durojaei from Illinois. And you bring in other dudes who not only have the size, two of them are over 300 pounds, but they have experience at multiple years in multiple schools in Power 4 programs, and specifically in a lot of cases the SEC. So I really like where in years past we might bring in guys from FCS level or the group of six level. Now we're bringing in proven guys who don't need to get used to playing physical like you do in the SEC. All they need to do is get familiar with the system, get strong, and get gelled with the guys. So I think we're winning on the lines of scrimmage. I think we're winning when it comes to the secondary, the receivers, talking about Nitro Tuggle. I'm talking about Jaden Gibson, who's a deep threat who will make defenses have to pick their poison between him and Nick Harbor. But not only are we getting the reloading and kind of getting targeted improvements at the skill positions, but the line of scrimmage has held South Carolina back for as far as I think a lot of Gamecock fans would go, especially in the Beamer tenure. If we had a 60th average, offensive line in 2024, I don't think we would have lost to LSU or Alabama or honestly Illinois. I think we would have made the college football playoff. But I think the fact that we're not only reloading at some of the skill positions, but also retooling our line of scrimmage completely, I think it's something that's not being talked about enough. I hope it doesn't get talked about enough. I don't want the preseason expectation to build. I think we thrive when we don't have that expectation. But honestly, South Carolina, not only in the portal, but this entire offseason has done everything to their possibility to make me have hope for the 2026 campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking really good for South Carolina. I know that Texas is definitely winning the portal, like you said, because they're getting some guys that Bama missed out. It's close, but no cigar for Bama on Cam Coleman. Alabama thought they were getting Hollywood Smothers, but then it's nope. I'm going to take my talents to Austin. So, and it looks to me Texas is going all in for 2026. Like all these moves they're making and adding Relate Brown from Arizona State. That's another move right there that says we're going to get Arch Manning a national title for the 2026 season. Not SEC title, not runner up, not making sure that we only beat Texas A&M and Oklahoma, but a national title for Arch Manning, no matter what it takes. Because you got to remember, like some people that are like, oh, well, you're number one or number two. Well, you're automatically going to win it all. Like, yeah, I don't think so. Somebody's got to tell that to Miami. So it's like that's staying, though. It's like it doesn't matter where you're ranked. It matters how you finish the season. That's the way I look at it. And the Longhorns are definitely showing that they are an overwhelming favorite, early season favorite for 2026. We're definitely going to see a lot of that. And Texas A&M, you mentioned, is another winner for 2026 in the portal. They're looking really good right there. Like, I mean, getting Horton to leave Bama, that's going to be a huge one right there. October 24th between Alabama and Texas A&M. Wonder if it's going to be awkward for him. I don't think it will. Like, for me, it'd be real awkward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those two teams in Texas and really just the entire state of Texas, even when we look at Texas Tech and TCU and all these other schools in Baylor, they're doing very well right now. But in regards to Texas, I agree with you with Hollywood Smothers, Malik Brown, Cam Coleman. They're bringing in a lot of star players. But one aspect of the ball I wanted to look at Texas, which I don't think a lot of people have talked about, is the special teams. And honestly, and it's not that they have a bad special teams in 2025. They had a top 40. They're ranked top 40 according to Bill Conley's S&P Plus rankings at the end of the season. But at some point, when your expectations get so high to a national championship, anything you can do to upgrade in the rankings per se, and really upgrade any aspect of the game is necessary. And you bring in, they bring in a new long snapper, a kicker, and a punter. I've looked up a little bit on them. I think they're not only going to maintain a little bit of the quality of special teams, but maybe possibly increase how good their special teams is as well. And I know how dangerous or volatile it can be having to replace your entire special teams. Going into this season, South Carolina didn't have a long snapper, field goal kicker, holder, basically everything, kickoff specialist, everything except for a punter with Mason Love. So I think bringing in those guys now to the portal on top of your recruits, I think that's a good way to try to keep continuity on that third side of the ball. And I will say, I do think Texas is doing a lot of when it comes to star power to support Arch Manning. But I would say as a Texas fan, if I was a Texas fan, it definitely does hurt when you lose guys such as Parker Livingstone, who loves the program, DeAndre Moore Jr., Jamie French, Aaron Butler. It's certainly, I think, not only just because I think those guys are good in themselves. I think they can start in a lot of places, but also from a depth standpoint, you lose 4 guys who have experience in the program, experience with Steve Sarkisian. I think that's something that's always somewhat of a negative, no matter how positive the situation ends up being. And then in regards to the Aggies, last time I checked, they're second in the country via the On3 transfer portal rankings with 17 commitments. And one thing I really thought was interesting was when we saw their offensive line. Now, whenever they played their tougher games, such as games against Miami or games against Texas, we saw where that offensive line tend to struggle a little bit. A lot of people said, they had an easy schedule, and when they faced real competition, that's when it kind of turned up. And I think you can see that a little bit on the offensive side of the ball with the line of scrimmage. But with the portal, they bring in some experienced guards such as Trevon Ball from South Carolina, who I think, although he didn't really work out at South Carolina, I think he has a high ceiling and a lot of potential. But you bring in Cohen Eccles and Tyree Adams from LSU, and all these guys have countless snaps against Power 4 competition. So I think you bring in guys on the offensive line who can protect Marcel Reed, who's returning for 2026. I think that's a massive thing. I think it's going to be one of the big storylines heading into next season. You bring in playmakers such as tight end Houston Thomas from UTSA, Isaiah Horton from Alabama, like we mentioned. And right now on the defensive line, edge and defensive tackle, you bring in 5 new guys who can either be starters with the right improvements in the offseason, but also some depth pieces, in the SEC and in the Power 4 in general. Having the depth on the line of scrimmage is important. But those two teams have certainly, like you've said, been absolute winners in the portal. But one school I think that a lot of people aren't really talking about is Kentucky. Now, Will Stein, who was formerly the offensive coordinator at Oregon, has done a very impressive job in the portal, especially when you consider where this program's at. Like for South Carolina, when we went 7-6 our first year and 8-5 on our second year, a lot of higher SEC schools, higher Big Ten schools would have looked at that and be like, it's just an 8-5 season. It's just 7-6. But when you look at where the program was, 2-8 at the end of the season under Will Muschamp, I mean, you have to look at where Kentucky has been in regards to their performance and the prestige in the past 5 years or so. And you look at the massive overhaul that's been happening. 26 players have been brought into the program as of now. And one thing I noticed about Stein and his staff are they're bringing in a lot of high upside guys from the Power Four level. You got C.J. Baxter and linebacker Elijah Barnes from Texas, offensive tackle Lance Hurd from Tennessee, which was massive, flipping to a rival like that. That's impressive. Interior offensive lineman Colton Bryce from Baylor, Kenny Minchie from Notre Dame as well. And I think you look at where Kentucky has been under Mark Stoops, especially last season and the year before, and you look at the struggle to find hope and positivity whenever it just seems like it was at the end of the line for Mark Stoops and it wasn't really going to go nowhere but down. And you really felt he plateaued when he got those 9-win, 10-win seasons. He just couldn't capitalize on the big games. You bring in a guy who's young, who understands the game in the era that it is now, and I think the players can relate to more. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing so many recruits and new guys come to Kentucky, other than the fact that it's just a new head coach.
Well, you know, Ole Miss as another school, they've definitely made some preparations because they got Deuce Knight from Auburn. I'm honestly wondering how that's going to turn out for 2026 and beyond. And I know like Auburn's got quite a few guys from South Florida, but is it really going to automatically translate to success for those guys? Because that's question though. Are they a little undersized? That's what it could be. But they did get a winner at running back, Washington from Baylor. That's another win right there for Auburn, it looks like. But Ole Miss, I'm curious to see how it turns out for Pete Golding's first 4 years in 2026.
Yeah, and then I have one last, just a little bit of a loser before I've kind of hit everything. I know we just talked about is Tennessee. It sucks because you saw what they did last year. You've kind of seen what they've done in the past couple of years, and it really, I feel like at least from my perspective, it shifted from when Hendon Hooker came in and they had that amazing season. Okay, we're on the rise. But with how it's been going the last couple of years, it's almost felt like it's turned from a rise to a plateau. And when you combine that with the fact that you lose Lance Hurd, like I said, to a rival team who was a third-team All-SEC guy, but I think was really underrated even with that honor he had. You bring in major uncertainty with pass protection. You have to force on a lot of young talent, especially and also on the defensive side. You lose edge rusher Caleb Herring, and it just really seems like you're losing guys in the trenches. You're losing guys in some of the skill positions, and you're taking steps back on a defense that already caused your defensive coordinator. They bring in some guys that have good ratings right now, but when you look at, I think, the state of the program with the portal, I still think you're at a net negative right now. I think they need a staple guy who's going to be a starter, who's going to be a staple for this team, a guy who that defenses or offenses are going to have to pay attention to the entire game to kind of just how South Carolina has done with like Jacarius Peak, kind of shift the momentum back into their favor.
Yeah, Tennessee's gonna need some wins and fast before Friday. It was funny when people talked about how Bama was losing because of a bad Sunday, but you know, Bama's had a bad week or bad time during the portal this year. Nowhere near as bad as the Volunteers. So it's like, hey, I'll bet we're better than Tennessee still. So there you go. Oh man, had to do some bragging, of course.
Yeah. But speaking of Texas, because I know that's kind of one of the teams we start off of, what do you think about Cam Coleman? Because I know that's been kind of a storyline, and I personally have some thoughts about it. But I want to know what like you think about Cam Coleman, because I think that's one of the most impactful transfer portal happenings that we'll probably see in the SEC.
He's gonna be a winner. He's not gonna have to fight and claw his way to try to get the 6 wins. He's not going to be part of a 10, 11 win team. He's part of a national championship contender now. And I think Texas is going to have a pretty good season. And it just got better with Coleman. Because it was like, as a Bama man, I hate that Alabama. Well, I don't want to say hate. I dislike the fact that they lost out on him, but at the same time, Texas got a winner in Cam Coleman. They're going to be winning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of top 10 worthy plays on Sports Center when the 2026 season rolls around.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing grab by the Longhorns in short. I'm 4th overall in the portal, number 1 wide receiver in the portal. And he's had 2 good years at Auburn despite everything that's been going on, especially offensively for them. Past 2 years, 93 catches, 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns. And you look at just his stats from last season, the only wide receiver in 2025 who had more stats or who had more yards and touchdowns than him in that aspect was Ryan Wingo, which, is a great receiver. So you look at what Coleman's done with a worse offense at Auburn. You average 14 yards per catch, which is more than a first down, of course. So you look at that production, you look at the physical, strong, fast, 6'3", 200 pounds. And not only do you have that, not only do you have all that production, but also that X factor. There's been quite a few times where he's made the big play, like you said, or that spectacular catch that'll end up on the ESPN top 10 or SportsCenter top 10 the next day or all over social media. And I actually looked at the splits for Coleman in 2025, and we're in the final margin where the game was decided by 7 points or less. He had 417 yards, which is over half of the yards he's had in this season in those games. So I think for Cam Coleman, when the lights are the brightest, he's shown the ability to make the plays needed and kind of take a step up. And I think Texas is not only getting a strong guy, a guy who can make contested catches, a guy who has that X factor, but a guy who's used to the pressure of a crazy home atmosphere and exotic fan base. I mean, when Cam Coleman came to Auburn, he was basically their savior in the Plains, right? I mean, he was expected to help elevate this offense. Whoever the quarterback was could just chuck it up to him, and it'd be smooth sailing from there. And I think you bring in a guy who's used to that noise, who's used to that pressure. And I think it's just going to be another outstanding weapon for Texas on top of the fact you get Hollywood Smothers. You bring in guys offensively like Malik Brown. You got to bring in guys defensively like Rasheem Biles, linebacker from Pitt. It's pretty clear the team in Austin is taking some big swings in the portal after a 10-3 finish to the season.
Yeah, I would not want to get on the bad side of Coleman. Like that's going to be a tremendous wide receiver quarterback duo for 2026 season. We're going to see a lot of that when they play Ohio State on September 12th. We're going to be seeing that on October 10th against the Oklahoma Sooners on the Red River rivalry in Dallas, and on rivalry week against Texas A&M, and against Tennessee in September 26th. So we're going to see a lot of opportunities for Coleman to really prove himself in Austin. And I think he's going to do a great job proving himself. He's going to do just fine over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I would not want to mess around with him. I mean, man, like Texas is going to have a tough road ahead of them 2026, but it just got really better for the Longhorns. But we've got some other topics to cover your way on SEC at the Voice of College Football on SEC Live. But first, a message from Mark Rogers.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
There you go. And that's why you go to Mark Rogers. You go to Steve Dace from the Michigan Podcast, Matt Zimick from USC Primetime Live, USC Trojans Wire, and College Wire, Corey Bradda from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and Steve Merrill for those under the radar pits of the week, all right there on VOCFB bets. All righty, so the question we've been waiting for, is it panic time for the SEC, as there is no SEC team in the national title for the third straight season? What do you think, Walker?
Yeah, I have actually I took some time whenever you mentioned or said that this was going to be kind of part of the show tonight. And I really looked down and just kind of not only looked at some of the statistics like records and stuff, but just kind of a vibe check in general. And in regards to answer your question for context, I mean, this year we went 4-10 in the postseason as a conference, 1-8 versus other Power Four conferences. And when it came down to it, we didn't play to the level needed when it mattered most. And I know we usually do well in the early season games, like when South Carolina beat Virginia Tech, like when Tennessee beat Syracuse, when LSU beat Clemson in week 1 in Memorial Stadium up in the upstate of South Carolina. And I know you usually do well against the midseason games like Auburn versus Baylor and stuff like that and other non-con foes. But especially as the season progresses and we really find out who the teams are at their core, during rivalry week and especially the postseason, it feels like as of late, we've been more vulnerable than we felt in honestly a long time. And like you said, it's the third straight year without making the national championship. This year it's Indiana, Miami. Last year it's Ohio State versus Notre Dame. The year before, Michigan versus a Pac-12 Washington. That is how long it's been. The last time the SEC had a team in the national championship, it was when Georgia went back-to-back and whooped TCU in an absolute bloodbath. That is how long it's been for the SEC. And I just don't think – I know as a person who is a fan of a team in the SEC, I know for a lot of SEC homers and all that, just they aren't used to that. So I have felt panic before, but I've also felt from some of the fan base, denial. We can't be down yet. Look at everything we've done, and I think they both have their points. And to be honest, to answer the question, I think we need to click the panic button, but I think our definitions or the severity of the panic might not be what most people would imagine. When I click the panic button, it's not more so the house is burning down, run for your life, duck and cover, stop, drop, and roll. It's more of you have to look at things objectively. As of late, our mid and bottom tier teams have not fared well. They haven't against other conferences. But generally, even when it happened in the past, we've always had the ace up our sleeve of saying, hey, we beat each other up all season. But the best of the best are in the SEC. The teams that go win the national championships and make deep playoff runs and postseason runs, those teams are in the SEC. And frankly, it's hard to argue from a standpoint saying that's true right now because results matter. And these results that we've seen over the past couple of years, they kind of align with the rising parity across college football with NIL and the portal and coaches moving wherever they want. Programs like Indiana are able to build quickly. Now, of course, Indiana is a little bit of a lightning in a bottle, but you kind of get what I'm saying. And they're able to compete with programs like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. We're kind of past the age where, going to – part of the reason you go to a team like Alabama is because of the storied tradition and proven winning they had there. We're kind of past that point. As part of it's the paycheck, part of it's the knowledge that any team can win any season. You've seen it with Miami this year. You've seen it with Indiana. You've seen it with Washington when Kellen DeBoer was there. And so in terms of the SEC, to answer your question, the panic button needs to be pressed, but my definition of panic is, like I said, not the house is on fire, stop, drop, and roll, run for your lives. It's kind of a wake-up call. The SEC is got a few punches. Big Ten's been punching at them a little bit with beating them. especially with Ohio State lately with all these teams. Miami beating Ole Miss certainly didn't help. Georgia losing as well. Alabama getting whopped by Indiana. So we're taking some punches right now, but we're not at the point where we're on the ropes. It's do or die. Luckily, with this era of college football and with the prestige that the SEC still has and the resources that the Southeast still has as a conference, is we're not at the breaking point yet. We are at the point where you see the stoplight, it's yellow, you have time to stop. You haven't ran it yet. The cop hasn't turned his lights on and is about to pull you over yet. There's still time to reverse course. And I think the future of the success of this conference, the future success of this conference is going to come down to what schools do with this. What do you do during this rare window where you either kind of take a decline as a conference, or do you strike back? Do you elevate your game? Do you elevate your coaching? Do you kind of rethink how you're doing things in terms of recruiting and NIL and resource allocation? What do you do? And I think the SEC hasn't had to do that in a long time, because the formula we had was always working for decades, especially the first 20 years of the 2000s, right? Especially the 2010s. But now that things are changing, we have to change with them as well, especially kind of the focus and just our allocation to how much we want to win in the SEC. So I think panic, might be a strong word. I would say you definitely need to wake up. You definitely might need a splash of cold water on your face to wake you up. You need to get up. You need to get out of bed. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I don't think we're past that breaking point. And I think this is going to be one of the few windows where, to a very, very lesser degree of what happened with the Pac-12, this is going to be a moment where the SEC and the teams in it have time to decide and really work for the future of their conference.
Agreed. Yeah, because I'm seeing like a lot of the Big Ten teams as well, and where they've got some big booster. And I was watching Indiana, Oregon last Friday, and this like pregame. I'm thinking, wait a minute, I see Mark Cuban there. Am I in the right world? I've never seen him at an Indiana football game. I didn't see him when, Indiana was. I mean, I get it. Indiana's his alma mater, but I didn't see him supporting Indiana when they were fighting for bowl eligibility in 2007. I didn't see him supporting Indiana when things were going bad. And, good grief. Like, good Lord. But I know that Texas, they've always got some rich booster, and A&M's got some rich boosters for sure. So I'm thinking maybe like some of the SC schools are like, well, we know somebody, so we got to call them. I mean, there's always a celebrity you could call to put in some support for you.
Yeah, for the high grade SEC teams, I don't think funding is an issue. I don't think it ever has been, of course. I think part of it is just having to rethink how you go about the sport in general with how the fact other schools are going about it, especially in other conferences. But also, I think for the schools that are a little bit lesser tier that don't have big donors, like South Carolina doesn't have a big donor like Mark Cuban, like all these guys, like people at Alabama. We don't have one of those big donors who can make those donations. So I think similarly, South Carolina is in a position where if we were able to get that sort of funding and that attention, it's either because we get a stroke of luck and have someone graduate from South Carolina who loved football and becomes a billionaire, or we have to make something out of basically, for lack of better phrasing, nothing before we can get the funding for something. And I think that's what you've seen Indiana do. Because I guarantee you, Mark Cuban didn't just say, "Oh yeah, what'd you finish? 2-10. All right, here's a couple $1 million." I mean, you see him coming into the picture after their 11-1 finish in the regular season, or 11-2 finish in 2024, and after they are where they are now. That's when you've really started seeing guys like Mark Cuban coming into the picture. So I think the whole point when it comes to teams that don't have that funding in the SEC is that funding will come eventually. You're in the Southeastern Conference. You're in the Southeast, a culturally rich and storied place where football has been special for centuries, literally centuries, since the 1800s. But you have to find the results without it before you can get that to come in and back you up, because people don't want to invest in something, especially with how high the market is getting for players and stuff. They don't want to invest in something that's not a guaranteed result. I mean, I just heard, I don't know the validity of this, but it's been going online. I don't know if you heard, but Ty Simpson's getting offers now this post, I don't know how true it is. $4 million from Ole Miss, $4 million from LSU, $6.5 million from another school. I don't even remember who it was.
Miami.
I mean, if this is Miami, if this is true, if this is actually true, if a college football quarterback who, honestly, I'm not sure could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, which I know we'll get to later, which if he's getting offered $6.5 million, when is this going to stop? When are donors going to get sick and tired of investing in people who, one, might not be guaranteed success, but two, they're just going to leave the next year or 2 years from now? If I spent $6.5 million on someone, I want them there all 4 years. They have a 4.0 GPA throughout college, and I want them to be Heisman winner at least one time. I mean, that's the type of expectation that comes with investment like that. And I think at some point, if we don't produce with the expectation and the investment, not just as in the SEC, but as in the country, I think we're going to face a little bit of a bubble and a little bit of a collapse in terms of funding and support from donors.
Oh yeah, I mean it'll be interesting to see what happens, but like 6.5 million from Miami to see if you can get Ty Simpson to go, hey buddy, leave the draft and we'll pay for you. I mean, of course it's the no state tax stuff, so that's definitely going to help. And everybody wants to retire in Florida. Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna have the Margaritaville song playing from Jimmy Buffett, man. Like that's always cool.
Yeah, did you see the post from UCF on social media? And it kind of started a trend for other schools where they posted their mascot holding up a big money bag, and they were like, "No income tax in the state of Florida, no income tax in the state of Texas." And I'm like, honestly, with not only with just players who want to get paid and keep their money, but donors who want to donate and keep their money, that's a heck of a recruiting pitch. I mean, that's just genius. It's genius. And it's just so funny to see. But that's kind of where we're getting at this point. It's just basically it feels like we're in a free agent world like the NFL, except there's no regulation.
No, it's like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, it feels like a circus. It honestly feels like a comedy show I'm watching on Netflix or Hulu, sometimes more than the sport itself.
Oh man, we should get like Dave Chappelle to comment on this, like for sure. Like I bet he's got some stuff to say. Oh man,
we should. I mean, I feel like during the commercial break, I'm gonna see the lady from Dance Moms or whatever from the reality shows come on and start talking about the team or whatever. I mean, it just feels ludicrous at some point, and I think we're really starting to see it with posts like that, and just with how the market's going in general.
oh man. Well, I mean, as the saying goes, truth is stranger than fiction. It is completely insane. I mean, like the mascot holding no state taxes, like that's a powerful way to swing your power right there. I mean, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we started the fairy tale of the U Part 3 on ESPN. Do 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 do. My God, that's just too funny. It's too funny because it's like. Yeah, it's like you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you can't even make it up. Oh man,
it's just such a crazy sport we live in now. It definitely wasn't what it was 10 years or just 5 years ago, really.
No, it's nuts, but it's just what we love the sport, that's for sure. Yeah, but it can be pretty crazy sometimes. But I think it's definitely an era we will be telling our children and grandchildren about.
Yep, a lot of bedtime stories.
Oh yeah, and definitely gonna be a Netflix documentary because I mean it's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, certainly. Although if they do something like the Saturday Down South or whatever they did for the Netflix or Saturdays in the South, I hope they do it a little bit better. I thought it was a little lackluster how they did it. I thought they could have covered more teams a little bit more evenly instead of putting effort into just so much big games. Honestly, I feel like we might get to the point where it wouldn't surprise me if in a couple years we start seeing Hard Knocks editions with the SEC and Big Ten and stuff like that. It wouldn't shock me. It doesn't feel ludicrous at this point, which in and of itself is ludicrous.
Well, we know who'd want a part of that. And that's Lane Kiffin. He'd be like,
Oh
"Look at
my
me,
goodness.
look at me. I'm so great. I'm so great."
Oh
Like,
my goodness. That'd be
he's such a
drama queens.
Oh man, like that SEC documentary on Netflix. It's like, look at me, I'm redeemed. That's like the Joker telling Harley Quinn, "I love you," whereas he really doesn't. He treats Harley
Yeah.
like crud. Even Batman has to tell her, he had you pegged as a hired gunman the moment you walked into Arkham." Man,
Yeah, it's so crazy. Not only is it seems like sometimes it seems like what he's saying is just completely opposite of his actions, but he knows it too, and he doesn't care that he's lying directly to your face or completely contradicting all of his actions. I think that's just so ludicrous.
and here we go. Here we go. We've got our last topic of the night: Trinidad Chambliss and Ty Simpson, as Trinidad is not likely to be playing in the 2026 season for the Ole Miss Rebels. He's been ruled not eligible. And even though I think he's still fighting it, but I doubt he's going to win that one. So therefore,
No.
that likely means he's going to the 2026 draft.
Yeah, I definitely, in regards to the lawsuit, before I kind of get into him with the NFL, I think it's very interesting. I think part of me looks at his situation and is like, well, Diego Pavia got it, at some point. I mean, JUCO Division II. I mean, is that really that much of a difference when it comes to eligibility? And I personally would love to see I don't want to play against Chambliss, but I would love to see Chambliss play another season of football. But at some point, I think the COVID season kind of messed everything up. You get an extra year, and now you got these 25-year-olds playing college football, and it doesn't feel real. And I think, unfortunately, at some point we have to cut it off, and it's going to suck for those guys who are like, well, the guys the past 3-4 years have gotten to play all those extra years. Why can't I? And unfortunately, that's true. But you got to stay at the fact life isn't fair, and you got to kind of cut them the short end of the stick for the sake of the sport. But in regards to Trinidad Chambliss coming to the NFL, I mean, just what a story from the young man. Nothing but praise for his story. You come from a Division II Ferris State, you win a national championship, and you head to Oxford. And then he wasn't the projected starter, and he wasn't the start into the season. I mean, after Austin Simmons had an injury early in the year, he takes it over. And he doesn't become just their quarterback, but one of the biggest storylines in college football, especially as the season progressed. I mean, nearly 4,000 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, while getting a QBR rating of 86.5, which is 5th in the nation. And he's a real threat on the ground, too. 527 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground. Just a real shifty guy. So statistically, he's great. You look at what he's done this year, he's great. You look at the story he has rising from a school like Ferris State, which no disrespect to them, but of course, going up to Division I. So I really like Chambliss, not just as an athlete and a quarterback, but as a person too. I mean, he's real humble, hardworking, talented. Sometimes people say players will reflect how a coach goes about their leadership. Despite everything that Lane Kiffin did, I think Chambliss is a real humble guy who cares about his team, who's loyal to Ole Miss and those people in Oxford. And you saw it after Miami. He cared about losing. He cared about the fact they lost, crying, sobbing, bawling his eyes out, just really in a lot of pain. I think that shows his devotion and his commitment to whoever team he plays for. And I think he's not only proved intentionally how good of a football player he is through his stats, but also who he is as a character unintentionally through his emotional devotion and loyalty to teams, which I think is something the NFL also loves. They want a guy who, whoever team he gets to, he's going to appreciate the opportunity because he knows where he comes from and also can ball out.
Oh, man, it would be a ballroom blitz for whoever gets Trinidad. It's going to be a win for whoever gets him. And, it's a shame that we're not going to see the revenge story of Trinidad going against Lane Kiffin on September 19th. I'm already just thinking about that game. That's going to be fun. I mean, on the one hand, I don't like it that they've got LSU Ole Miss that early, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, you know what? Revenge stories are good no matter what date it's on.
Yep. That's that. Honestly, besides seeing him play football again just for another season in college and seeing how explosive he is, I would love to see that just for the sake of that storyline. Steve said, Walker, respect your perspective. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
Oh, he's amazing, man. Like, I mean, Walker knows what's up in the world of not just South Carolina football and athletics, but just the SEC as a whole, but college football as a whole, period. You know, it's like Walker knows what's up with it. And I can tell you, he really knows his stuff. And I'm learning a little more about college football from Walker, for that matter. But yeah, like,
I appreciate the support, Jackson.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all good. I appreciate the support, Jackson. It's been great working with y'all at the Voice of College Football. Just all the guys, not just you, with the entire network, definitely supporting me. I just started, I started in August of last year, so it's been less than 6 months. So just being able to grow and be able to talk about the sport and just the communities that I love has been an amazing thing. And Steve, the stuff you say, Jackson, the stuff you say, it only motivates me further to hopefully become someone you might see on ESPN and CBS and all these shows. So,
well, there you go, man. Like, you're making all kinds of magic, man. I tell you what. And I've been really thinking about it. I feel like now that Trinidad is going to be in the draft, of course, for 2026. Mm-hmm. I don't think that changes a thing for Ty Simpson. As honestly, I mean, we're obviously not going to see Trinidad or Ty be in the first two pits. That's a good thing because they are drafted by dung heaps like the Raiders and the Jets. It's not the 1968 season where the Raiders and Jets are just ruling the AFL. No. These are pitiful teams named the Raiders and Jets in 2026. I mean, they're looking like a complete disaster. The Raiders are changing coaches like they change clothes. The Jets, who knows with them? I mean, it's a trash organization. It's. I really have no good words for it, honestly. I wish them nothing but awesomeness. But luckily, there's a bright side to not being a first pick or a second pick, and that means better teams are going to want you. And I'm thinking, honestly, and this is regardless of how the Steelers do in the playoffs. I don't see Aaron Rodgers lasting beyond 2026. I mean, Aaron Rodgers wants to go do podcasts or he wants to call games. I don't know what Rodgers is doing, but I don't. He's not playing till he's 50, like he said a few years back. No, he's not going to. I mean, he'd be nuts too. I mean, like, dude is going to be 43 years old in December. And Matthew Stafford, I see him returning for 2026, obviously. But after that, I see the Rams planning for another QB. And the Cardinals, they're definitely sick and tired of the Kyler Murray era. The Dolphins are definitely heading in a new direction. But once again, that's not a good organization. They got way too hyped up, especially in 2022, where they were like, okay, we got Tyreek Hill. We're going to win it all. Yeah, no, you're not. One player does not mean you're going to win it all. Have you not learned from the Jets with Le'Veon Bell 2019? No, I guess not. So that's what I'm thinking. But what do you think, Walker?
In regards to the NFL, it's not my expertise, but I do think we're at one of those points where it happens every 3 to 5 years where there's at least a noticeable portion of teams that are about to look for a new quarterback. And like you said, I don't think this quarterback class is the strongest. I think next year's has the potential to be stronger, especially Manning, Lenore Sellers. Garrett Nussmeier didn't play out like many people thought. Cade Klubnik didn't play out like many people thought. Sam Levitt's going to be staying for college next year. So I think this is definitely a little bit weaker side of the quarterback class for the 2026 NFL draft. But it kind of makes a good point is, the dream I feel like was always to be the number one pick. right? Because it felt like, especially in the 2010s, even I'd say 2020, 2021, is those teams, they had a purpose. They had a direction with what they were going. Yeah, you were starting at the bottom, but it almost felt like there was a little bit more certainty with where you're trying to go. And now, the Raiders bring in Pete Carroll just to fire him a year later, which I didn't think it was a good hire to begin with whatsoever. And then you have whatever the Jets are doing, the Browns, who've now fired Stefanski, which I think was right. The Dolphins with the entire thing with Mike McDaniel, Tua, Tyreek, everything. It almost feels like that teams aren't bad in the NFL just because they can't get the talent or just because they can't get the right coach. It's because they don't know what to do with themselves and they can't commit to a certain direction. It's like they'll try to commit to something for a year and they're like, well, we could keep working at it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but yikes from the Dolphins. Let's see. Did Walker? Oh man, row. Yeah, it's loading. Good grief. Yeah, internet's messing around with Walker. I am so sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, there you are. Row. But yeah, it's not looking good in Cleveland. And for their sake, yeah. The connection cut you off for a moment, man. Uh-oh.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Loud
Sorry about that. Sorry. Took me a second. I was like, what's going on? And I kind of kept talking for about 5 seconds before I realized it. But it almost feels like schools just don't have, our teams in the NFL don't have a sense of direction and they don't want to commit, even if it takes a couple of years. Like Howie Roseman with the Eagles. I'm an Eagles fan. Speaking of the Eagles, I'm glad we got put out of our misery. I'm done with watching whatever that was this season. Trade A.J. Brown. He talks too much on social media just to drop the ball. Fire Kevin Patullo. He's terrible. But anyways, back on topic. Howie Roseman had a goal. After Doug Peterson and we kind of took it downhill, like our first year, with Jalen Hurts and the year after, it wasn't the greatest, right? But he stayed committed, and it's not like NFL teams have to commit for 5-6 years to grow success. If you work really hard in one direction under one philosophy for 2 to 3 years, I think you're going to get success. I think that's how football works. When you commit to something and you work hard to a goal, results are going to show up. Consistency is key. But it seems like programs, especially as you get higher up in the ranks, aren't just willing to commit to that. And it's really mind-boggling to me how you think you're just going to succeed, where it's almost like teams like, well, if Indiana can do it in college, maybe I can do it in the NFL. And I don't think you can do that in the NFL like you can in college. You can't just amass players like that because you just can't afford that, right? There's salary caps for a reason. There's teams are not going to trade with you just to give you a super team, right? There was a clause in the Micah Parsons trade from the Cowboys to the Packers saying, hey, you can't give this guy to the Eagles. There's stuff like that prevents that from happening. It prevents from teams from being a one-year run all of a sudden, except for the most rare cases, like the Rams whenever they won the Super Bowl a couple years back. It boggles me that teams who are performing so bad they're at the top of the draft are acting like that. And that honestly just de-incentivizes wanting to be the first-round pick. If I was heading into the draft next year and going to be a first-round pick, I'd be praying I'm at least not in the top 10. Because I'm going to a place where, I might have a chance to start depending on my position and at least, get some backup rotational snaps, but also a team that knows what they're doing, right? And it's almost like you want to sell your draft capital a little bit. And it's not something I think we're used to, right? Obviously, there's been players who don't want to go to the number one overall just because they don't like the team. You've seen it in the NBA. You've seen it in the NFL, NHL. You've seen it across sports before. But now it just seems like it's just a common thought. It's just like, welcome to the NFL draft. The last team in the first round is the best team of the regular season. And, by the way, hope you don't get picked in the first 10 picks. What are we doing, right? I mean, just 5 years ago, I think anybody would be elated to be drafted by whoever they get drafted. But now it's like the thought of Lenore Sellers potentially going to the New York Jets. I'd be like, oh, I might have a heart attack. I might have a heart attack if I see Lenore Sellers or Nick Harbor or Dylan Stewart go to the Browns or to the Jets or whatever. It's just like, or to the Dolphins. I don't want to see them in those programs because it's clear that from the top down, there's no commitment to a certain direction and to a certain commitment to succeed.
No doubt. And, if I'm the Rams, I'm trading up in the 2026 draft, regardless of how my team is doing. If I'm the Rams, I go ahead and do it. Doesn't matter if they win the NFC or if they lose in the divisional round or the NFC title game. Go ahead and plan for the future now. Go ahead and trade up for the draft. If you gotta trade a 2027 first round draft pick with somebody, then you just gotta do it. And it's definitely a blessing for Trinidad and Ty Simpson. Just kind of like figure out what's gonna happen. Like the Rams are definitely gonna have to trade up. They gotta trade up. They gotta be like, okay, beyond 2026, what's our plan, Scoop? I mean, like Sean McVay and Trinidad Chambliss, or Sean McVay and Ty Simpson. That's pretty fun to think about, especially when we're thinking about the 49ers Rams rivalry in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think Trinidad. I could perfectly envision Trinidad Chambliss in a Rams uniform doing a no look pass like Matthew Stafford. It just seems so natural in my mind. But speaking of Ty Simpson, I mean, we talked about Chambliss, and I kind of brought up the kind of story he had, the non-traditional rise to glory and fame. But one thing I really appreciate about Ty Simpson is, while Chambliss did that, and it's great, and I don't think he was ever a portal hopper or nothing by that, his story kind of represents the ideal situation for players in this era of college football. But Ty Simpson, he kind of, to me, embodies what it means to be loyal to a program in this era where there's NIL, transfer portal, offers, under the deal things all the time. I mean, similar to Lenore Sellers staying despite all the offers that he no doubt had and saying he had unfinished business in Carolina. I admire this about Ty Simpson. I mean, you stay for 3 years on the bench behind guys like Jalen Milroe and all that to compete, and you finally get your first starting season in 2025. So just from a Carolina fan to an Alabama fan, I appreciate the loyalty out of your quarterback, Ty Simpson. But I think my main concern with him is, and I think it will be the NFL's biggest concern, is just his lack of experience. Sitting for 3 years and learning under Alabama is good in that aspect, that I'd rather sit as a quarterback behind Alabama than probably at most other schools in the country. But it's really just his lack of experience as a starter. Only one season is not really that impressive, especially when you honestly look at how NFL teams, I think, perceive his performance. I think even when you look at it in the most positive way, there were a lot of times where he struggled. Part of it was because of a bad offensive line at times. Part of it was because of him not being able to be accurate at times, or just overthrowing it, or making the wrong read, especially against Florida State. You saw it early. You saw it against Georgia. You saw it a little bit against Auburn as well, or sometimes he holds on to the ball too long. And I think if he decided to come back to college, obviously part of it might be an NIL offer, especially if he goes to another school, no doubt. But I think part of it is, like Lenore Sellers didn't go to the NFL, like no doubt he could have gone to the NFL, if not a first-round pick, maybe a second or third-round pick. But I think, if I'm not a psychiatrist here, but if I was trying to get in the philosophy as one of those two players, I would use this next year, I think, honestly, as an opportunity to prove yourself, where last year was kind of a bad sample of you and your team, and kind of, or maybe just not an impressive one. And I think NFL teams think it's good when you go off on a high note, right? Like Carson Beck, how he's doing on a high note, leaving with Miami, that's going to be impressive. Same thing with Trinidad Chambliss, right? But I think Ty Simpson, he doesn't really have that at Alabama, with how the Indiana game went, with how the Georgia game went in the SEC championship, and the Florida State game, and all of that. I mean, yeah, he's had his moments, but if you ask me, if I were him, I would want to stay and try to build another year of, even if next year you go 10-2 and you lose in the first round of the playoffs, but it's a competitive game. Even if you don't win the national championship, that's another year for you to improve as a quarterback and not only make a stronger resume, but just a longer resume of experience as a starter in football, which I think is something that NFL teams will certainly want to look at for him.
Oh, great. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Well, that concludes this clip of SEC at the Voice of College Football, where you could go over the magic that Andrew, Josh, Tucker, and I are bringing all of you on SEC at the Voice of College Football, all right here. Like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss no video whatsoever. Walker, what magic are you cooking up on South Carolina at the Voice of College Football again, buddy?
Well, currently, for those who are watching right now, I was just wrapped up my show actually at around 8 o'clock. I had it starts at 7 o'clock. I'm with Chris Marler from the Locked On Gamecocks. So we had a great show, talked about the transfer portal for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But also, if you want more than just weekly shows and episodes of South Carolina Live at the Voice of College Football, follow me on X, WGSports_CFB. That's where I make articles from interviews. I personally had conversation with players coming into the program or who have been looking at Carolina, breaking news posts, not just by the day, not just by the hour, but a lot of times within 10 minutes of the news posting. So if you want breaking news posts, if you want my honest thoughts about the state of South Carolina football and the news that happens with it, which as of right now is a lot, and also just generally talking to players and talking just about the state of the program, I certainly ask you to please follow. I'd love if you want to hit the notifications on my post as well and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps me. It supports me in becoming a sports media personality, but also it just gives you college football more content, because I know if you're watching here tonight, you love college football, just like me, just like Jackson, just like the rest of the Voice of College Football Network. So thank you, Jackson, again for this opportunity. It's been great to come on SEC Live.
Oh, thank you for coming on, man. And, may I ask it, for those that are just like, look at the grow their Ets account, just from like 0 to 1,000, 0 to 10,000, because, you're fast on the rise. You were once at $65 at one point. How do you grow your Ets account for those looking to grow it really fast?
Yes. I only started in August of last year, and there were times where I kind of slumped at 60 followers, slumped at 300 followers. My first thing I would say, lost connection with my cameras, but that's okay. I'll keep talking. I would say the first thing is focus on something you're passionate about, because I think you see through my post and through the way I talk about on the Voice of College Football Network is when you have passion about something, you put in a lot of detail and a lot of effort. I try to make it a point to put in detail with my post, because I think a lot of people appreciate not having to go to another website or not having to look for data and stats about a certain player or a certain game themselves. So I certainly, for those who want to grow their channel, I would say put detail in posts. The details matter, the small things, Maybe most people won't remember by the next day if someone has 3 years of eligibility remaining, but those small details are noticeable and a lot of people appreciate them. But also I would say consistency. I usually try to make multiple posts a day. I try to reply to the people who follow me and reply to my posts, and also just on X as well. Not only is that just kind of a good habit, but also it kind of helps with the algorithm from that sort of perspective with X and everything. But yeah, I'd say consistency and finding something you're passionate enough about to be able to post with detail day in and day out.
There you go, man. There you have it, folks. Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publish about the magic that Walker Gaskins brings all right here on South Carolina at the Voice of College Football, and the magic he brings on WG Sports_CFB. He's a magician, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you what. And of course, you can check me out on Albell with the Voice of College Football. You could also check out my personal channel, Jackson Johnson 979, where I host my show, The Jacksonian, and I will be having my next 2 episodes. One of them will be with Alex Dono of Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC, as we discuss whether the U Part 3 has already started or is it just beginning. Is Netflix going to take it away from Disney? Nah. We'll save that part for the show, of course. But, of course, you can check out the next episode after that with Alec Keyser of Indiana at the Voice of College Football, where we're talking a lot about the Indiana Hoosiers And whether Mark Cuban support being at the Indiana games is genuine or is he faking it till he's making it? Well, maybe I'll talk about that. But that's why you tune in to Jats and Johnson 979, where I'm basically 268 subs away from that magic number, 1,000. And for more updates, what I've got going on Alabama with the Voice of College Football, the Jats 70, SEC at the Voice of College Football, and much more of my adventures, check me out on Jats VOCFB on @/Twitter and on Instagram and Threads at Jats and Johnson 543-908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe to SEC at the Voice of College Football so you never miss another video whatsoever. And we will see y'all soon. Take care, everybody.